What's up everyone, Andre here. So March 2026 is shaping up to be one of those months where we're actually gonna have to pick and choose which one to play because there's just too much coming out. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean legitimately stacked with stuff across every genre. You got your massive open world action games, you got your horror, your turn-based RPGs for strategy nerds, extraction shooters that have been causing internet drama for like a year now, and there's a bunch of indie games that honestly look way more polished than they have any right to be. I've been going through everything that's dropping this month and I wanted to put together a proper breakdown so you're not just sitting there on Steam or the PlayStation Store just scrolling for an hour trying to figure out what's actually worth your time and money, because let's be real, we've all done that. You get decision paralysis and you end up buying nothing, and then 2 weeks later and you're like, wait, did that come out already? So I'm covering 15 games in this video. Some of them you definitely heard about, some might be flying under your radar, why it might be worth caring about, and I'll give you my honest take on what I'm feeling about each one. No corporate speak, no reading off a press release, just real talk gaming. And real quick before we jump in, if you want to hang out while I test some of these games live, I stream over on Twitch. The link is right below this video. I'll probably be diving into a few of these day one. Definitely going to be playing some of them on Steam to see if they're worth the hype. So come through and hang out. It's going to be a good time. I don't have a fucking split personality. I'm just an asshole in all personalities, okay? Shut up. What are you, a psychiatrist? I didn't know I had a doctor in the chat. You look like you got a split personality. What the fuck, you gonna tell me my childhood was bad? Yes, news alert, it already was. We already know that. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to cover here. First up, and this is a big one for a lot of people, Crimson Desert launches on March 19th on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC, and they're even doing a Mac version, which is kind of wild. This game has been on a lot of people's radars for years now. Pearl Abyss has been teasing it, showing off at events, and the hype has been building steadily. A few weeks back, they announced it went gold, which means development's done and they're pressing disc and getting ready for launch. Apparently, it hit over 2 million wish lists on Steam like 6 weeks before the release date. That's not a small number. There's a lot of people paying attention. So what is actually Crimson Desert? It's a single player open world action RPG. You're not dealing with any microtransactions. You're not grinding for any loot boxes. There's no player versus player. It's just you, a massive open world, and a story driven campaign. Pearl Abyss is known for Black Desert Online, which is an MMO, but this is them trying to prove that they can focus on a single player experience. The combat is what's getting people excited, and honestly from what I've seen, it looks pretty sick. It's very melee focused and it's got a weighty cinematic feel to it. You're chaining grapples, you're timing counters, and you're pulling off brutal finishes. It's not quite a Souls-like, but it's definitely got that deliberate, commitment-based feel where you can't just button mash your way through tough fights. What sets it apart though is the mobility. You can climb almost anything in the world. You got this gliding system that lets you cover huge distances, and they want you to use terrain during combat. So you're not just rolling around on flat ground, you're positioning yourself on rooftops, ledges, and using elevation to your advantage. What I'm really curious about is how they're handling the open world structure, because that's where a lot of these games fall apart. You know what I'm talking about. You played those games where the match is huge and just filled with icons and checklist activities that feel like busy work. Pearl Abyss says that Crimson Desert is designed so that even the side content feels meaningful, like you're not just clearing up map markers, you're actually doing the stuff that matters. They're talking about fortress sieges, big chaotic battles with dozens of NPCs, and these massive boss fights that are supposed to be more than just a hit the glowing weak spot for 10 minutes. And I really hope they pull that off, because the open world fatigue is really real right now. We've all been burned by games that promise this big, huge open world full of activities, and then 3 hours in you realize you're just doing the same 5 things over and over again. If Crimson Desert can actually deliver variety and make exploration feel rewarding without padding the runtime with filler, that's gonna be huge. This looks absolutely stunning. I mean, generally impressive. They're pushing their engine really hard here. You got dynamic weather system, real-time lighting that changes based on the time of day and conditions, fog that actually reacts when you move through it, water with proper physics where wave crashes against the shore, and the scale is what gets me. They keep saying that if you see it, you can go there, which is what every open world game says, but the draw distance in this game is insane. You can actually see landmarks from miles away, and yes, you can actually get to them. Oh, and you can actually ride a dragon, like a full-on dragon mount. They confirmed that. And it's one of those features that's either gonna feel incredible and this be an amazing power fantasy moment, or it's gonna be gimmicky and you'll use it once or twice and then forget about it. I'm leaning towards optimistic though. Pearl Abyss has the technical chop and they know how to make things look and feel good. So I think the dragon is gonna be a highlight. My overall take on Crimson Desert, I'm cautiously optimistic. I want this to be a great game. The pieces are all there. The combat looks solid. The world is gorgeous. The scope is ambition, but the single player action RPGs live or die on the pacing and the structure. If they nail the balance between the main story content and the optional stuff, if the combat stays engaging for 40 or 50 hours, if the world feels alive and not pretty but empty, this could be legitimately one of the best games of the year. But if it's bloated, if it drags in the middle, if the side content becomes repetitive, it's gonna be a beautiful mess that people bounce off of 15 hours later. I'm definitely gonna be playing this day one. I've been waiting for way too long, and I'll probably stream it at least the first few hours so we can see together if it lives up to the hype. All right, next up we got to talk about Marathon. It launches March 5th on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC. And oh man, this game right here, this has been a whole thing, hasn't it? So Marathon was announced by Bungie and people immediately had reactions, strong reactions. Some folks were excited because it's Bungie, the studio that made Halo and Destiny, so they know how to make shooters feel incredible. But a lot of people were confused or straight up angry about it, and I kind of see both sides. Here's why it's been so controversial. First, it's an extraction PvP shooter. Think Escape from Tarkov or The Cycle or even The Hunt Showdown. You drop into a map, you complete objectives, you find loot, and you try to extract before you die and lose everything. It's a very specific genre and it's not for everyone. Second, it's a paid game up front. You're not getting this for free and then buying cosmetics. You're paying for a full price at launch. And third, it's not the old Marathon. It's not a faithful sequel or remake to the classic Mac games from the 90s. It's using the name and some of the aesthetic DNA, but it's a completely different game. That alone would be enough to get people riled up, but then things got even messier. There were accusations about the art being used. There was public fallout with some of the artists involved. Bungie had to address it, and there was a clear internal pressure and turmoil, and they delayed the game. The whole rollout felt shaky, and I think that's what put a lot of people on edge. Like, even the folks who were initially interested started wondering, okay, but what's really going on behind the scenes here? So here's the thing, I want to be fair about this. I think a lot of hate Marathon's getting is kind of unwarranted, or at least premature. Yes, the controversy is real and Bungie has stumbled with the communication and the art situation, but under all that noise, the actual pitch for the game is still very Bungie, and Bungie knows how to make guns feel real, and Bungie knows how to make guns feel real good. That's their thing. That's what they've been doing for decades. So what's the core loop? You drop into a map as a runner, you're part of a faction, and you get contracts, specific objectives that you're trying to complete. Maybe it's retrieving data, maybe it's killing a specific target, maybe it's hacking a terminal. You're doing that while other players are also on the map trying to do their own objectives. You find loot, weapons, gear, upgrades, and then you have to extract. Get to an extraction point and get out alive. If you die, you lose your gear. That's the tension and that's the hook. It's not just an aimless player versus player where you're running around shooting whoever you see. There's structure to it, there's stakes. Even every run is a risk reward calculation. Do you push for one or more objective and lose, risking everything? Do you extract early with what you've got? Do you engage it with another player or avoid them altogether? That kind of decision making is what makes extraction shooters compelling when they work well. What I appreciate about Marathon, and this is something Bungie has been very vocal about, is that they're addressing quality of life issues that plague other games in this genre. Battle passes won't expire, and that's huge. You're not forced into this FOMO grinding every 3 months. Solo players who get thrown into lobbies full of 3-man squads where they just get free kills. They're trying to make matchmaking fair, which is again a huge deal. A lot of extraction games feel hostile towards solo players, and Bungie is saying we're not doing that. And on the technical side, Marathon is running Bungie on in-house Tiger engine, which is the same tech powering Destiny 2. They're pushing PlayStation 5 and PS5 Pro features hard. Stuff like PSSR upscaling for sharper image quality and higher resolutions. On PC, the system requirements are surprisingly reasonable. Minimum specs is a GTX 1050 Ti. Recommended is an RTX 2060. That's pretty friendly for a 2026 game. And here's something very important. Bungie doing a server slam for February 26th to March 22nd. That's basically an open stress test where everyone can jump in and play for free before launch. If you're on the fence about Marathon, now's your chance. You don't have to pre-order. You don't have to commit to anything. Just download it, play for a weekend, and decide if it's for you or not. My take on Marathon, I think, is very divisive no matter what. Some people are gonna love the tight gunplay and the tension of extraction gameplay. Others are gonna hate that, and that's not what they wanted from a Marathon game, or they'll bounce off the paid price tag, or they'll get frustrated with the learning curve. Extraction shooters are niche for a reason. They're stressful, they're punishing, and they demand your full attention. Me personally, I'm gonna play the server slam. I'm gonna give it a real shot, judging on its own merit. And if the shooting feels as good as I hope it does, because if there's one thing Bungie never failed at, it's making guns feel incredible to shoot. And in a genre like this, that is half the battle right there.
Your loving mother, Mahin.
Alright, switching up the gears completely. If you're into turn-based RPGs, StayAlpha 2 is your game of this month. March 12th, PC only, is launching into early access. So Technical Adventures is the studio behind this. They made the first StayAlpha on what I imagine was a pretty tight budget, and it landed with a very specific audience. People who love D&D style tactical combat, and I mean that literally. The game uses the 5th edition D&D rule set under license. It's not like inspired D&D, it's actual D&D mechanics in video game form. The first game didn't have the budget or the polish of something like Baldur's Gate 3, but it worked. The rules were clean, positioning mattered, verticality was visual in combat, and the fights had the tabletop rhythm where you're thinking several turns ahead. It scratched an itch for people who wanted technical depth without a flashy nonsense getting in the way. For StayAlpha 2, the big upgrade is presentation. They clearly put money into making this look like a modern RPG. Better character models, smoother animations, and more detailed environments. It's trying to close the gap between budget indie tactic game and actual RPG with production value. And that's exactly what it needed, because the first game looked pretty rough if we're being honest. But the core is still the same here. You're building a party of 4 characters. You got your classic roles: fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue. You're planning your turns, managing action economy, using bonus actions and reactions. Positioning matters, cover matters, evasion matters. If you got the high ground, you get an advantage on your attack rolls. If an enemy is flanked, they're easier to hit. It's all about using the environment and understanding the rule set. What Technical's Adventures have talked about for the sequel is making the cowards more readable, and that might sound like a minor thing, but in practice that's huge. In the first games, sometimes stuff would happen and you wouldn't fully understand why it did. Like, you'd miss an attack and the first game would tell you miss, and you wouldn't know if it's because of the AC score or cover or the disadvantage of a spell effect. For people who know D&D inside and out, that's fine, but for everyone else it was very frustrating. So in StayAlpha 2, they're being very clear about the math and the reasons behind it. When something works or doesn't work, you'll understand why, and over the course of a 40 or 50 hour campaign, that clarity makes a huge difference. You're not constantly wondering if you're doing something wrong or if the game is just being unclear. The other thing that they're leaning into is the party synergy, like really leaning into it. You're encouraged to build a team where everyone has a role and you're combining abilities in smart ways. Your wizard creates grease to make the ground difficult terrain. Your fighter shoves enemy into the grease so they fall prone. Your rogue gets an advantage on attack against prone targets and land a big sneak attack. That type of synergy is what makes these games satisfying when they click. If you're chasing the Baldur's Gate 3 feeling and you want something that's that's laser focused on turn-based tactical combat, StayAlpha 2 is worth watching. It's not trying to be a huge cinematic RPG with branching storylines or romances and all that stuff. It's trying to be the best tactical combat game it can be, and for a certain type of player, that's honestly perfect. Now it's launching into early access, so expect some rough around the edges, expect bugs, expect balancing issues, expect missing features that'll get added over time. But Technical Adventures earned a lot of goodwill with the first game. They supported it for years, they listened to feedback, and they added a ton of content. I trust them to do right by this one as well. I'll probably wait for the full 1.0 release personally, just because I like to play games when they're complete, but if you're hungry for a meaty turn-based action RPG right now, and you don't mind early access jank, this is one of the better options dropping in March. Life is Strange Reunion, March 26th for PlayStation, Xbox, PC, Switch, it's everywhere. Max and Chloe are back, and if you played the original Life is Strange back in 2015, that sentence either just made your day or made you very nervous. I'm somewhere in the middle, to be honest. So let's talk about what this is. Life is Strange has always been about choice-based narrative adventures where your decisions shape how the story plays out. The original game followed Max, a high school student who discovers she can rewind time, and Chloe, her childhood best friend. The story was emotional, sometimes messy, and it hit a lot of people hard. Like, people were legitimately crying by the end of the game. It dealt with heavy themes, friendship, loss, trauma, and the weight of consequences. The series has continued since then. Before the Storm was a prequel focused on Chloe. Life is Strange 2 was about two brothers on the run. The True Colors introduced a new protagonist with empathy-based power. They've been all solid, but none of them quite captured the magic of the first game, and I think a lot of that comes down to Max and Cleo. Their friendships were the heart of the original, and people have been asking for them to be back ever since. So Reunion is Deck Knight's answer to that. Max and Cleo are both playable protagonists, and you can switch between them throughout the story. Max is at Caledon University, and she's got 3 days to stop a deadly fire from destroying the place. She's got her time rewind powers, but she's working against a countdown. 3 days and that's it. Chloe's involved too, and she's got her own gameplay mechanics. The game isn't just Max does everything and Chloe's along for the ride. They both have agency, they both affect how the situation plays out. Max has her time powers obviously, but Chloe's got her own way of handling conversations, investigation, and intense moments. She's more confrontational and more direct, and that changes the tone of the scenes when you're controlling her versus Max. What Deck 9 is really leaning into here is relationship-driven consequences. People remember what you said. They remember what you revealed and what you kept secret. They remember if you were kind or dismissive or suspicious, and those reactions carry forward in later scenes. It's not just a pick a dialogue option and forget about it. It's this person now doesn't trust you because how you handled that conversation 3 hours ago. The setting is intentionally compact. You're not traveling the world, you're in one location that evolves and changes as the countdown tightens and the tension builds. It's one campus, one community, and the focus is on the people and the secrets. Small character moments that spiral into bigger conflicts. Relationship fractured under pressure, that's the vibe. And here's my honest take on this. Life is Strange works when it commits to its characters and it lets emotional moments breathe. The first game nailed this balance. It had the time mechanics, but they were in service of the story and the relationship. They weren't just a gimmick. The game was willing to slow down and let you sit with Max in her dorm room listening to music to give you quieter moments that made big dramatic moments hit harder. Before the Storm and True Colors were good, but they didn't quite have the same weight to it. Life is Strange 2 was ambitious but divisive because it sidelined Max and Chloe entirely. Reunion has the advantage of bringing them back, which is a huge portion of the fan bases, but it also has to justify their return. It can't just be fan service. It has to earn the reunion. It has to tell a story worth these characters. The dual protagonist setup is smart. Switching between Max and Chloe means you're seeing events from both perspectives, and they open up interesting narrative and possibilities. The 3-day countdown is a good structural choice. It creates urgency and it keeps the pacing tight, and it prevents the story from dragging out. But I've been burnt on sequels that bank too hard on nostalgia. I play games that bring back beloved characters and they don't know what to do with them, so I'm consciously interested in reunion. I really want it to be good. I want Deck 9 to stick the landing. I want this to be the return that Max and Chloe deserve. But I'm not gonna pre-order it. I'm waiting to see what people say after launch, because this is one I need to know if it actually delivers emotionally before I commit. If it works, if the story is strong and the character work is there, this could be one of the most important games in the series. If it doesn't, it's gonna be a disappointment that people will be talking about for years.
Chloe sets off to find her childhood best friend and partner in time, and thus the story of Life is Strange Reunion begins.
Alright, let's talk about Screamer. This is the Milestone's new arcade racer, and it's launching in on March, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. So Milestone is known for making racing games, but they're usually lean on sim or sim adjacent. MotoGP Ride, Hot Wheels Unleashed, they've covered a lot of ground, but Screamer is different. This is them going full arcade, full aggression, full chaos, and the whole pitch is simple. Contact is not just allowed, it's encouraged. You're not trying to nail the perfect race line. You're not worrying about the temperature or the fuel management. You're fighting for position at 200 miles per hour, and cars are gonna trade paint, shove each other off the track, and sometimes races turn into straight up brawls. It's the opposite of a sim, and that's the whole point. What makes it interesting is how Milestones designed the tracks to support aggressive style. Narrow sections where you're squeezing through a side-by-side with two other cars. Sharp corners where one good shove can send someone off a wall. Layouts that reward risk and punishment hesitation. The idea is that every lap feels like a small story, because one messy collision can flip the standings completely. You could be in first place, take a corner too aggressively, and clip another car, spin out, and suddenly you're in 8th place. Or you could be in 6th and see an opening, slam someone into a barrier, and jump 3 positions into one corner. That's the fantasy they're selling. Races where anything can happen, where you're not just optimizing lap times, you're surviving. Milestone has been making racing games for a very long time, and they know how to tune handling for controller, and that's crucial in an arcade racer. If cars feel floaty or unresponsive, the whole thing just falls apart. If you don't get the immediate feedback when you turn or brake or hit someone, it's not fun. So the fact that Milestone behind this gives me some confidence that the fundamentals will be sold. Screamer is built to be fast, loud, and readable. You should always understand why you crashed or how you pulled off the last second overtake. The game should feel good to play even when you're losing, because the chaos itself is entertaining. I think this is gonna land with people who love Burnout games, especially Burnout 3 and Revenge, or the older Need for Speed titles like Hot Pursuit and Most Wanted. Those games weren't trying to be classic, they were trying to be fun. They're about adrenaline and spectacle and laughing when you cause a 15-car pileup. And honestly, we need more games like that. The genre has been leaning hard into Sims for the past decade. Gran Turismo, Forza Motorsport, iRacing, they all chase realism and authenticity, which is great, but it's also exhausting at times. Not every racing game needs to be a serious simulation. Sometimes you just want to wreck other cars, pull off ridiculous overtakes, and not worry about wear and tear. Screamer looks like it's filling the gap. It's not trying to teach you about racing, it's trying to let you have a good time. And if Milestone nails the handling and the track design, this could be a sleeper hit. Alright, this next one is interesting. 1348 Ex Voto, March 12th, PlayStation 5 and PC. So this is a cinematic third-person action adventure set in Italy during the Black Death. The year is 1348, hence the title. You play as Ayeta, a young knight on a brutal rescue mission to rescue her companion Bianca. And yes, that's the great Jennifer English voicing Bianca. You know her as Shadowheart from Baldur's Gate 3. What immediately stands out on this game is the atmosphere. Said Leo based in Italy, and they're going for a premium presentation. Like this doesn't look like a small indie game. It's ambitious, it's cinematic, and it's very polished. The world is collapsing around you, plague is spreading, people are dying, fear is everywhere. You got bandits, mercenary, and religious fanatics. Towns that feel lived in but also dirty and unstable, like society is barely holding on together. And that setting is very rare in these games. We get medieval fantasy all the time, but historical medieval during one of the darkest periods in Europe history is very fresh. And the fact that it's made by an Italian studio is telling an Italian story makes it very, very authentic in a way that games set in generic fantasy Europe just don't. Combat is what I'm really curious about because it's built around historical European martial arts, not flashy cinematic video game versions of sword fighting, actual inspired combat. It's about spacing, timing, reading your opponents, choosing your guard, and committing to those strikes. You're not just mashing buttons and pulling off crazy combos. You're being deliberate, you're looking for openings, and when you land a clean hit that feels weighty and impactful. If you play Kingdom Come Deliverance, that's the closest to compare, or maybe Hellish Court if you tried that. It's grounded, methodical, and requires you to actually learn how combat works. You can't just spam dodge and light attacks your way through fights. You get punished for that. Between combat encounters, you're exploring ruined villages, churches, cramped streets, forests, and plague pits. The game isn't open world, it's more linear with room to explore. You get environmental puzzles, shortcuts you can unlock, and small story details hidden throughout the world that flesh out era and people living through it. One thing that I love is that Seth Leo's committing to the historical angle without turning this into a dry history lesson. Like, the world feels authentic. The authenticity is grounded, but it's also still a video game. You're not spending half the game reading text code entries about the bubonic plague. The story and the atmosphere do the heavy lifting for you. The fact that this is coming from a small indie team makes it even more impressive. These are not AAA resources. They're clearly pounding everything that they got into this project, and the fact that Meridian is publishing it and doing physical editions for the PS5, including a collector editions, tells me that they believe in it. You don't do collector editions for game that you think you're gonna flop. I'm generally excited for this one. It got atmosphere, it has unique storytelling, and the combat looks deliberate and satisfying. If they nail the pacing in the story, if the combat stays engaging and doesn't be repetitive, this could be a sleeper hit. One of those games where people play it and love it and then spend the next 6 months telling their friends you need to play this. The only concern that I have is the length and replayability. These kind of focused linear narrative games can sometimes be over an 8 or 10 hours, and if the combat is in the main draw, I'm wondering if there's enough variety to keep it interested all the way through. I'm willing to give it a benefit of a doubt. Sometimes a tight, focused 8-hour experience is better than a bloated 40-long slog.
This, I vow.
John Carpenter's Toxic Commando, March 12th, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and PC. This is a co-op shooter, and the pitch is basically B-movie horror action in a video game form. You're fighting a toxic outbreak that's turned the world into a mess of mutants and monsters, and the game wants you to have fun with it. It's not trying to be The Last of Us or Dead Space. It's trying to be loud, gross, chaotic, and replayable with your friends. John Carpenter's name is attached, and it's not just for marketing. The game is chasing the vibe that the fans expect. If you've seen The Thing, Escape from New York, or They Live, you know the atmosphere. It's a mix of slimy practical effects, horror, and goofy action swagger. It's dark, but it's not overdone. It knows it's ridiculous, and it leans into that. The setup is simple. Toxic outbreak, the world goes to hell, and you're part of the squad trying to survive and fight back. You're not saving humanity or uncovering a deep conspiracy. You're just trying to make it through the mission, shoot a bunch of monsters, and have a good time doing it. The game is designed for co-op, squads up to 4 players, and everyone has a role. You've got different loadouts, different abilities, and the idea is you're working together to survive chaotic missions. It's not slow and tactical like Ready or Not, it's more fast and aggressive and built around movement to movement action. What's gonna make or break Toxic Commando is how the shooting and movement feels. These kind of games, horde shooters, co-op action games, they live or die on core gameplay loop. If the guns feels good to shoot, if enemies react in satisfying ways, if movement is responsive and you feel powerful, the game works well. If the shooting is floaty, if enemies are bullet sponges, if movements feel sluggish, it's gonna die fast. The pitch is that it's replayable. You're supposed to run missions multiple times, try different loadouts, equipment with different team composition. There's probably some kind of progression system, unlocking new weapons, upgrading gear, that sort of thing. The structure is designed around one more run gameplay. I think this would be a great grab 3 friends and turn your brain off type of game, and honestly, we need more of those. Not everything has to be depth or mechanically complex or emotionally draining. Sometimes you just want to shoot mutants with your buddies, laugh at how gross the enemy's designs are, and just vibe to a Carpenter inspired synthetic soundtrack. If shooting feels tight and missions have enough variety to stay interesting maybe after 10 or 15 hours, this could be a really solid co-op game. If it's shallow and repetitive, it'll be fun for a weekend and then everyone would just move on from it. I'm cautiously interested. I'll probably wait to see how the reception is like, because co-op games are hard to judge until you actually played them with the group. But if my friends pick it up and say, yeah, this is a good one, I'll definitely play it. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection, March 2026, Nintendo Switch and PC. Alright guys, so this is the turn-based RPG side of Monster Hunters. If you're familiar with the mainline Monster Hunter games, World, Rise, and Wilds, those action games are where you're hunting monsters in real-time combat. Monster Hunter Stories is completely different. It's a turn-based JRPG where you're not hunting monsters, you're hatching them, raising them, and riding them into battle. It's basically Pokemon meets Monster Hunter, which sounds like a weird combination, but it really works well. You play as a rider and your whole deal is bonding with monsters instead of killing them. You find eggs, hatch them, and raise them from babies, and then they become your companions if you ride them into turn-based against other monsters. The setup for Stories 3 is heavier than previous games. There's 2 countries on the brink of war, there's this crystallizing phenomenon spreading across the land, and you hatch twin Rallos and with the scaling markings that are tied to the old Civil War. The wider theme is extinction. Monster species are disappearing, ecosystems are collapsing, and there's this looming sense that the natural world is dying. The combat is what makes this series special. It's turn-based, but it's not just pick, attack, enemy, attack, repeat. There's this rock, paper, scissors system where different attack types encounter each other. You're reading enemy patterns, matching elements, chaining skills between your character and your monsters. You're building a kingship gauge, and when it fills, you can pull off powerful team attacks. And the team building is huge. Different monsters have different roles. Some are tanks, some are damage dealers, some have utility skills. You're not just picking the highest level monster, you're thinking about type coverage, synergy, and how your team works well together. It has real depth if you engage with it. You can rebuild damaged areas and restore ecosystems, and doing that attracts specific monster species. So you got reasons to revisit regions, hunt for rare eggs, and engage with the world beyond pushing the main story forward. One thing I really appreciate is that there's already a trial version available. It covers the opening chapters of the game, lets you create your character, and your save data carries over to the full game when it launches. There's no reason not to. Download it, play through the first few hours, and see if the loop clicks for you. I've always had a soft spot for story games. They're charming, the monster designs are incredible because it's Monster Hunters, of course they are, and the turn-based combat is legitimately depth. It's not just a simple JRPG, the strategy involved, and if you engage with the systems, there's a lot to dig into. If you enjoy JRPG games and you want something unique to hook into, if you ever thought about Pokemon but with some monsters that actually look cool and the combat has real weight to it, Story 3 is worth your time. I think it's going to be one of those games that flies under the radar for a lot of people because it's not a big bombastic game, but most people are going to play it and love it. Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake, March 2026, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Okay, this one is going to be a full remake and one of the best horror games ever made. Fatal Frame 2 originally came out in '03 and is widely considered the peak of the series. The developers isn't just doing a remaster here, they rebuilt this thing from the ground up. New engine, updated controls, modern systems, completely redone visuals and audio. If you're not familiar with Fatal Frame, the hook is the camera obscura. You fight ghosts by taking pictures of them, and that's it. That's the core mechanic right there. You explore this haunted village, you encounter spirits, and instead of shooting them with a gun, you're capturing them on film. It sounds gimmicky, but in practice it's terrifyingly brilliant. The reason it works is because to get a good shot, you have to face the ghost directly and let it get close. You're incentivized to let the ghost charge at you so you can land a more powerful picture, and that creates this incredible tension where you fight every instinct to run away, because running means you're not dealing damage. You have to stand your ground, frame your shot, and wait for the right moment. The remake is trying to smooth out the experience without losing what made the original so special. The camera obscura is still the identity of the game, but they're making the loop feel more cohesive so exploration and combat don't feel two separate games duplicate together. One detail that stand out is the new hold hands mechanic with Mayu, your sister. In the original, Mayu would just follow you around. In the remake, you can actively hold her hand as you move through the village, and that sounds like a small thing, but it actually changes how the game feels. It makes the bond between the sister more tangible, and it pushes that relationship into a moment-to-moment gameplay instead of just cutscenes. It also gives the developer a new tool for building tension. Your movement changes when you're holding hand. Your pacing is different, and there's probably going to be moments where you have to let go, where you're separated, and when the separation is going to feel significant because you spent so much time holding hands. The other focus is the sound design. The developers is using advanced 3D audio to help you sense where the spirits are before you see them. You'll hear whispers, footsteps, breathing, and you'll be able to pinpoint the direction. For a horror game built on atmosphere and dread, Fatal Frame has always been about what you hear more than what you see. The audio does so much heavy lifting and creating this oppressive, haunting feeling. If you ever played the original Fatal Frame 2, this is going to be an incredible entry point. It's one of the best horror games ever made, and now it's gonna look and sound like a modern release. If you did play the original, the remake is different enough to feel fresh, so it's not gonna feel like the same game with better graphics. They reworked systems, added new mechanics, and they changed the pacing in meaningful ways. I love that the developers is keeping this series alive. Horror games has trended towards action for the past decades. Resident Evil has guns and combat, Dead Space has action game with horror elements, and even newer games like Callisto Protocol are very combat focused. Fatal Frames is one of those new franchises that stays true to the slow burn, atmospheric dread. You're not empowered, you're not mowing down enemies, you're vulnerable, you're scared, and the game wants you to feel that way. That's the different kind of horror, and it's valuable. We need more games like that.
Fatal Frame 2, Crimson Butterfly.
Alright, so that's my games launching in March 2026. We covered a lot of ground here. Big open action world games, extraction shooters, turn-based RPGs, horror remake, arcader racers, and indie surprises. March is legitimately stacked. You're gonna have to make a few choices because you can't play everything at once unless you're not sleeping. So pick what sounds interesting, check out some reviews when they drop, and don't feel like you have to play everything at once. Drop a comment and let me know what you're most excited for. Are you diving into Crimson Desert the second that it launches? Are you going to give Marathon a shot during the Server Slam? Are you waiting for something that I didn't cover? Let me know in the comments. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. It helps more people find the video, and it tells me that you want more stuff like this. Subscribe if you're new here because I'm covering games all year long and turning the notifications on so you don't miss anything. Again, I'm streaming on Twitch, so the link is right below. I'll be playing a bunch of these games live, so if you want to hang out and watch me figure out if they're actually good, come through and hang out. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe, stay smart, and stay alpha.